So my name is Don Bowman, and my company is Agilicus. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some partnerships that we've been working on with companies that have been supporting the wastewater industry. So the wastewater industry is not specific to this webinar, but I'm going to use those as examples. But the idea should apply in any industrial, industrial control system type system. And the main thing I'm going to pitch you on today is that remote operations is the future. Remote operations is a non-zero sum. It's a win for everybody. It's a win for the person who owns the plant. It's a win for the person that provides that service. And we think it's an excellent opportunity for companies that are doing design and build type things today, which may offer a la carte support services on time and materials or specifics to get a new SaaS type service, something that was ongoing as a subscription, which is priced on value rather than cost plus. And we think it's an opportunity for the operator to win as well. So let me dig into that a little bit detail. So this is my agenda. So today I'm going to discuss what are the managed remote operations drivers, what we're seeing as we work with our customers and our partners in this area. And your experience may be different. So feel free to put something in the chat if you think I've missed a key point or misunderstood a key point. But the main drivers that I'm seeing are a skill set gap. Control systems are getting more complex, more interconnected, and as a consequence, having somebody with a very narrow but deep skill set is difficult to get in each physical location. The second thing is the SaaSification of systems. I'll explain that in a bit, but this is it's a pretty big deal in the industry. And the third is, no real surprise here, big data, predictive analytics, and cloud continues to encroach everywhere, and that includes the industrial automation, the wastewater plants. I'm going to talk a little bit about the perspectives. So remember I said my perspective might be different than yours, but if you own and operate that plant, the challenges that you cite are different than what your partners will cite for the same plant. And then I'm going to come back to that proposal where I think there's an opportunity for everybody to win here. Non-zero sum, zero sum means I win, you lose. Non-zero sum means we all win. So I like to think about that in the paradigm of like building a house. The raw materials are not worth that much money, and the individual trades, the carpenter and the electrician. But when you put it all together, the sum is worth more than the parts were individually. And that's what I think there's an opportunity here is for everybody to win. It's a lot more fun when everybody wins. I mean, it's not like poker where somebody has to lose, but in this case, we want everybody to win. So what is managed remote operations? I'm not an expert on every aspect of nuance here. There's different acronyms that are used: remote operations and asset management, remote operations and monitoring. But the key is you're doing something that is needed all of the time. It's not a, VFD 19 is breaking down. Can you come and fix it for me? It is something that is scheduled. You know what's going to happen. It could be reports that you supply for regulatory purposes to who your permits are from. It could be monitoring the SCADA system for alarms. It could be anything that is predictable, ongoing, and needed for the lifespan of the plant. It isn't something in the first year. This type of warranty. So what we're seeing is systems are getting more complex. It used to be that an industrial automation system was a couple of limit switches and an XOR, and it started to get into real-time measurements and thermostats and distributed control systems. And now, one of the plants I was in the other day, there's 2,500 IP addresses in this building, which is more than even a mid-sized office would have. And the amount of stuff that's involved in those is really complicated. There's a lot of sensors. The systems are getting more interconnected, so that means you can have cascade failures. When system A fails, B might become upset because of the interconnectedness of all things. But it also means they're interconnected to things that are sort of more loosely attached. So you could have a license server which is off-net. What happens if you lose access to the license server? Does it go into a grace period for 1 hour? Does it go into a grace period for 1 week? What happens? You don't want your plant to go down because your firewall broke. But also people are starting to experiment with off-net historians. They're saying, well, these are, there's a lot of disk and I don't really like where it is. And, maybe it's a store and forward model, or maybe that's just where it is. And it's cheaper, it's better, it's faster, and networks are getting reliable enough that we can handle it. There's a big driver here of efficiency. So you'll hear this again and again, people banging the gong of doing more with less. And a big part of that is predictive analytics. You think about, I've got a big motor and the manufacturer says I should take it out of service and do its, servicing every 1 year. And you're like, okay, let's do that. It's a 4-hour outage. Predictive analytics says, no, don't do that. Every motor is different. Some motors are going to be less than a year and some are much greater than a year. Let's do it when it's needed. One of the things in my life that impacted me on this, and not so much recently, but I bought a new vehicle in 2011. That was the last time I bought a new vehicle. And it had this feature in it. It tells you when to change the oil based on a sensor that tells you how dirty the oil is. And I drive in a very different environment than you do. And maybe the roads I drive on don't have a lot of dust and yours do. Or maybe my air filter, I bought a cheap one, you bought a better one. Our oil changes no longer need to be 6,000 kilometers apart or 12,000 kilometers apart or whatever it is for your vehicle. It's different. This is what predictive analytics is all about. And this is a great spot where that higher complexity does truly yield higher reward, but it can be difficult to get there. People want mean time to repair to go down. They want to have less inventory sitting on the shelves, which is wasted dollars. This is their method. So this is what managed remote operations has become about. I promised I'd talk about SaaSification. So, in my lifetime, the CD-ROM or the CD was launched and died. And it was a relatively quick life cycle. I remember absolutely lusting after this Technics CD player, 5-disc changer with mash, multi-audio, something, harmonics or something, and, saving up all of my money working on the farm to buy this thing. And not that many years, and then going into like HMV and browsing the shelves. And not that many years later, Rhapsody came out and you could stream, but nobody really did for a while. And today, I haven't bought a CD in a long time. So music became a service. The same is happening with hard goods, manufactured goods. And John Deere is very famous for this. They've been going through a digital transformation of a very quote unquote Rust Belt type technology, which is a tractor. And it's not that tractor on the right, it's a slightly newer tractor, but you can't buy it unless you agree to have it fully 24/7 connected. And you're not allowed to repair it. Only John Deere is allowed to repair it. And there's been lawsuits on the subject and it's still being litigated and people are upset about it. But one of the side effects is there's more people involved in the day-to-day value chain after purchase. And you're seeing that in the industrial plant today. You're seeing maybe your building management system has a managed service that's part of it. You can't buy it without that. This thing has this. One of my customers has this chiller from Siemens, and in order for Siemens for you to buy it from Siemens, you have to agree to have it connect to them, for them to monitor it. And as a consequence, how you do your network segmentation changes. So that chiller is on the same network as all of your other SCADA components, and Siemens has access to it. And what does that mean? And you're starting to see this as other things there. So the more the SaaSification, the more product as a service evolves, the more you're going to see changes. Now, the manufacturers are obviously doing this to make money. They are heartless, greedy capitalists after all. But they also have another reason, which is, gone are the days where you could just engineer it once and sell it for years. That cycle's getting shorter and the complexity is going up, and they're starting to have to do very material post-sales engineering support to fix bugs in software. It's something that, when you bought a vehicle 30 years ago, nobody really understood there was software in it. It was very tiny microcontrollers, engine control units, and so on. And today, you've probably gotten 3 headlines today about Tesla recalls 6 million vehicles, and the recall is them hitting download on, they changed the font size on the some sort of error indicator. That was a recall, but it was software. So the amount of engineering they have to do post-sale has gone up. So as a consequence, they need a revenue chain. The alternative would be, if there's no revenue post-sale, then there's no fixes post-sale, and you're stuck with something that doesn't really work. So it is sort of in the interests of the operator, but it is also something that is a bit of a pain. Nobody likes having their cheese moved. Nobody likes change, but change is happening, so stay on my lawn, I guess. And the third big driver of managed remote operations is big data. Funny story, a bunch of years ago, I was on stage on a panel. There was 5 of us up there, and I didn't know the people that were on the panel with me. And I don't think we were even speaking on the same topic. Big audience, maybe 500 people. We all were all asked to introduce ourselves. And the guy on my right said the most asinine thing. He's like, I'm so-and-so, and I invented big data. I'm like, No way. So I said, "Hi, I'm Don Bowman. I invented the battery." And everybody looked at me funny. I'm like, well, he can get away with it. Why not me? Big data is a big thing. And it means lots of things to different people. But in a nutshell, it means that data's moved from being a monthly compliance report that you could lose a few of to something that's driving real-time millisecond type value. And that predictive maintenance we talked about earlier, you're measuring the motor spin up time or its temperature versus time or noise or whatever your signals are. Inventory, you're looking for patterns. Patterns occur in a complex way, and it depends on everybody's business. But the better you are at predicting means you don't have to overbuy inventory to have it sitting around, whether it's for spares or whether it's something you're selling. Anomaly detection, minimizing the use of chemicals is another big one here. Coming back to the wastewater industry, your ideal situation is it's all organic and there's nothing involved from a chemical standpoint. So how do you minimize them? Well, you need more information about how the process is running today, how it ran yesterday, what might occur tomorrow. There's a lot of remote operations based around big data. This is something that people find hard to do. It gets more economical to do the more you scale it. So for my industry, we talk about single instance multi-tenant SaaS. And the reality is that for me to run one really big system is much cheaper than to run a lot of small systems. And I pass the savings on to my customers. And the same is true for big data. It's much easier for you to have petabytes of data and have, a dedicated database admin and a dedicated backup person than a lot of people that have, it's just part of my job. I guess I should remember to back that up while I'm taking out the trash. It doesn't get done properly. And then you realize the backups have never been tested. People are like, what? You test backups now? No, yeah, you test your backups. One of the big challenges in the industrial system is that big data, it's not an on-site thing. I mean, there's lots of companies that are trying that, the fog, the low-hanging, the edge compute and so on. But the reality is this is a big data, big cloud because it's taking big AI chips from NVIDIA and AMD, and it doesn't really scale well at the edge. So we think this is an excellent opportunity for people to do remote operations around. So now that I've sort of described what I see as remote operations, now let's talk about what the different roles are, because they have very different desires in life, other than they all want to, have a bigger house or whatever. But the first role that I identify here is I operate. It's my plant. I own it. The risk is mine. The buck stops here. So if you own and operate, and sometimes you even design, build, own, and operate, that's great. You see that in something like a nuclear system where it's very, very complicated, and they brought all the expertise in-house to do it. The further away you get from large, you start to realize that it's a little bit difficult for you to run certain aspects of things. It could be cameras. Maybe you've got surveillance cameras or door locks that you run a managed service for. It could be backup, but there's always something that it's more economical for you to outsource because other people are able to do it more economically than you can, either because they have the skill sets and you can't afford to have a full-time person with that skill set, or because of going back to that big data, they've got more stuff so that it costs less per unit. The I manage, so this is the person that provides that service to the operator, and they run part or all of the system under contract. And as a consequence, there's a shared model here. There's a shared reward, shared risk model between these two. It's in both of their interests for nothing bad to ever happen, but they have slightly different definitions of bad. The next one, these are sometimes lumped together, design, build companies. You are the company that says, I'm going to use PLC A and relay switch B and VFDC, and you program that PLC, and sometimes you build the panels and bend the metal and all of these other things. But at the end of it, you've built something that's highly complex and you deliver it. And there's a handoff period. So there's the commissioning period where you're getting it going and you're getting all the bugs out of it. And then there may be a warranty period after that where, for the first year, we come back on site and fix things, etc. And it's really this audience that I see has the biggest opportunity here, in that they can add another more profitable prepackaged service, which segues from the design, build, deploy into the ongoing operation. So rather than bidding on an RFP and winning the business and delivering it and doing warranty for a year and then losing the revenue stream and having to struggle with the staffing, they can have an ongoing, more profitable, lower cost service, but also higher value. The I support demographic, so this is more time and materials, you call them and they come and they fix something like that. And if it breaks, they fix it. And this model is always going to be there, but it's difficult to make it very profitable because it's hard to staff it, because you always need to have some idle staff just to be able to satisfy a peak load. But also your customer is a little bit reluctant to pay you much more than the hourly rate that they would pay their own staff. And so you need to drive somebody there, and you say, well, it's $2,500 a day, and they're like, it's only an hour. Why can't I just pay $38.95? And then the other role on this chart is the I manufacture. So I produce stuff. I'm Allen Bradley, I'm Siemens, I'm Emerson, and these components are used elsewhere in here. And sometimes I'm required to help support them. So, sometimes it's because of a complexity issue and we're debugging something. Sometimes it's a bug. Sometimes it's a feature, the sassification of my industry. But these roles all work together. Unlike the little set of gears at the right, which is more clip arty than actual, because it would be difficult to rotate those gears, as you can tell. So one of the metaphors, I like metaphors, by the way. Similes are okay, but they're not as good as a metaphor. The metaphor here is this pretty old one, and a bunch of blind people are poking at an elephant, and they each have a very different understanding of what they're seeing. It's a snake, it's a wall, it's a rope. No one person has the right answer, but collectively we have the right answer. Across that earlier thing, their challenges are not symmetric. So the operator, they would use phrases like, I own the risk. Cybersecurity is very important to me. I'm the one with the insurance. If it's down, I'm the one with egg on my face, maybe literally if you're on a chicken farm. But this is my problem. So security, et cetera, is very, very important to me. The I manage demographic, it's slightly different. I don't think they would say the word security is unimportant, but from their standpoint, it's more of a cost and it's an expense. They would say phrases like, all my customers use a different VPN and a different sign-in system with different multi-factor, and they're just lowering my efficiency. Why can't they all be the same? Do they really, I think they're being a little bit picky on this security thing, to be honest. Do we really need to sign in and do this audit? Can't we just have a shared password or something like that? My team just wants full connectivity to everything to get their job done. I don't want to have to decide on what thing I'm talking to inside the industrial network to make it go. And as a consequence, there's a couple of fields that are core to my company, to Agilica's business: identity, connectivity, and policy. They become a battleground rather than a common ground. So you see an argument here about how the user is going to, what the identity of the user. Am I going to create a contractor at my company? Are they going to sign in with their own credentials? Are they allowed to be shared? Can they not be shared? Policy, do you have to have multi-factor in every login? Is it okay for some people when they're on certain IPs to not have it? And connectivity, are you allowed to have remote connectivity? Is it something that's brought up on demand? Is it always on, etc.? This becomes an acrimonious discussion. And the other thing that's kind of acrimonious here, it's about backdoors versus pragmatism. And I did a walkthrough of a plant about a year ago, and they were adamant in the pre-meeting. They were like, you will never find any sort of backdoor in this plant. And I'm walking around and I'm like, I have a pretty strong telecom background. I'm like, that thing over there with two antennas about this long, I'll eat my hat if those aren't 700 megahertz LTE antennas. And sure enough, this box on the wall, it's got one Ethernet cable coming out of it and two antennas and nothing else. I mean, let's follow the trail on this. This is absolutely a backdoor. You see this a lot with other devices out there that provide cellular-based connectivity. And it's kind of a way to sneak around the air gap. And people that put them in argue, this is the pragmatic solution. This is what everybody does. People who get caught on that later when they're in the news or being sued argue, well, I wasn't involved in that decision. You broke my policy. The identity battleground. So this one's super near and dear to my heart. So at Agilicus, one of the core tenets of our belief system is that every person has one natural online identity for work. And if you try to break that and give them more, it actually just creates problems. They have to write their passwords down. They have different password rules and so on. So, and some people call this single sign-on. Single sign-on is a good term for this. Some people call this identity federation. Federation is a good term for this as well. But the key is, I should be able to sign in as Don at Agilicus, and you should be able to sign in as Jane at your company, each in the same way we do for everything. So the same for email. We use G Suite. You might use Azure. Doesn't really matter. That identity should work across the board in all companies, not just my own company, but in my partners. And here the service that I'm pitching at into your portfolio is remote operations. You are hiring a team of people that's fluctuating in size. You've got some of them are seasonal, and some of them are quitting to go back to school, and some of them are quitting because you made them too wealthy with stock options. Who knows? But you're always got people coming and going. And what you don't want is for every one of your customers having to go and create a new account. The operator is the same thing, but backwards. Remember, it's a flip side of the same coin. They want to know that each person is very strongly authenticated and is an individual person. I got to have a throat to choke when something bad happens. I want it to be a person, not a company. Back to that Siemens chiller example I used earlier, you don't want there to be an account called Siemens and just how many people work for Siemens, how many people quit yesterday, how many people were fired yesterday, who owns the password to that? That's what happened at the Oldsmar water plant. A set of people who were all individually very trustworthy shared a password, and one of them used it on another system and it got breached. And what we think is that every individual user should be able to use their single corporate, single sign-on. Identity is different than authorization. Authorization is what you're allowed to do. Identity and authentication is who you are. The operator needs to 100% own authorization. They are the ones that decide who can do what, but the who is owned by the origin company. And that way, when people change on their team, they don't really have to tell their downstream partners. This is a big win for everybody. Convenience goes up dramatically when everything is single sign-on. You don't have to remember, customer B, they use this technique. How do I sign in? Customer A is like this. Security also goes up. It's harder to spearfish people when they have a very consistent sign-in experience. You get an email saying, do this password reset. I'm like, that color scheme doesn't match my normal login. If you're teaching your team to use a different method to sign into everything, it's very easy to spearfish them. So that's part of my pitch here today, is that this identity battleground, which we solve, it doesn't matter whether it's Google, Okta, Apple, other identities, but the reality is nobody is working in the corporate world today without either a Microsoft or a Google account, because your mobile phone requires it, your PC requires it, your company requires it. And those identities can be used to sign into anything around the world, not just stuff in your company, and we'll help you with that. It's very easy to do. So that's what, in a nutshell, I'm not going into detail on Zero Trust today. Zero Trust is about this concept. There's three main things for Zero Trust. I call it the who, the what, the how problem. And you put them in different swim lanes. Don't cross these over. Just because you are someone doesn't mean you're allowed to do something. The who problem is 100% owned by the company that employs you. Who writes your paycheck? They're the one that attests that you are this individual. The what problem is 100% owned by the person that owns the risk at the end of the chain, at the end of the rope. That's the operator. They say that identity is allowed to do this thing. Program a PLC, read my wiki, back up my historian, whatever it is. Those are different concepts and they're owned by different companies. And the last part is the how. How do I get you there? So the proposition is figure out who you are using strong single sign-on, multi-factor, web-based, modern, yada, 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 biometric, all the good stuff that you're already teaching your team how to do and they're used to. And the second is, once that comes in, trust that, because those are trustworthy things, and then decide what that individual is allowed to do, either right now or ongoing, and then bring in the how. And the how is narrow. It's not a VPN where you say, you now have access to everything, please stay in the right area. It's, okay, you now have access to that. Think about a manufacturing line. You got five lines, line 1 through 5, and they got big, heavy robots that swing around. And think about somebody having to come in and do some work in one of those. They want to make sure they put a safety pin in it and so on. Now think about remote support. You want to make sure they're upgrading the firmware on robot 3, which has the pin, not robot 2 by accident, which doesn't have the pin. That's where the how gets very narrow. That's what Zero Trust is. Who are you? What is that thing? What are you allowed to do on it? Those things are together. It's not who are you? Okay, you can do something to anything I have. That's Zero Trust. Coming back to that shared custody, that shared destiny issue, these are really, this is a partnership. There's real value to be had here, but they have very different perspectives, and they are driven. They're both driven by the almighty dollar of cost and efficiency, but they don't need to fight. The operator, they view this problem as vendor access management. I got a lot of vendors, and it's hard to manage them, and I got to set up policies and procedures, and this is how I do my business. The vendor, which in this case is the person providing the managed remote operations, they tend to view the problem another way. Yet another VPN, yet another identity. I've got many clients. I don't have licenses that VPN. You can't install 3 different VPNs on the same laptop. They get different versions. They crash. How am I going to teach my team about this? Multi-factor. They want to do multi-factor. What am I going to do? Have a mailing list to send that out? Hey, the code for the next 1 minute is this. It goes to everybody on my team. Hard problem for them. They each have a different perspective on this, and this is where we come in, is to help align that. We partner with that vendor, with that operator, or the vendor or the operator, and we make everybody's life simpler. So the operator challenges, and again, some of you on the webinar here are going to know this much better than I do. I own the risk, so security is very important. My staff also need remote access sometimes. This is a big aha moment. So many of the companies that we've partnered with are ones providing remote operations. So they are not the operator, they are managing something on behalf of, they're managing the SCADA alarms or what have you. But they find that their own customers like, hey, that's pretty cool. I see you're able to do that. I'm tired of having to drive in sometimes on the weekend if something goes wrong. Can I also use that platform? And then they provide that back to them as a service and makes it very sticky. Identity is a very sticky thing. So in this case, it's a shared custody. We might need to both look at that HMI together to debug something. Well, this is a good platform. The operator will say things like, I have rules that are either internal to me or to my industry to comply with, and I own the obligation to be compliant. I've got a license, etc. I've made choices here. I have audit. You've got to obey that. They often complain, I don't have a lot of control. My vendor dictates. John Deere. There's not a lot of farmers saying, I'm so happy John Deere forces me to, repair it by them all the time. In fact, a lot of those farmers are in court. But they didn't feel they had a choice in the matter. The more complex things get, the more they just have to trust, and they don't like that. And remote support is very expensive on an hourly basis. They don't like remote support. Why should if I call you and it's only going to take you 15 minutes to fix this, why is that $800? Well, it's because I got the team and I got overhead and my team's not always fully utilized and you didn't give a good remote system, so I had to drive there. You can see their challenge. The manager challenge is different. The manager challenge is every customer is different. It's expensive. I can't have some of my team not able to work with some of my customers. What am I supposed to do? Have laptop for company A, B, and C, but then we traveling. I'm not going on an aircraft with five laptops in case one of my customers calls. I don't have the licenses to that. Oh, it's Cisco, yada, yada. I don't have a license to that. We don't use it. My customer's telling me I need it. I can't share them across my team. I can't share multi-factor. Their multi-factor is not the same as mine. We've adopted YubiKey, but they're telling me they use this system. I don't want 2 of those things. They just want efficiency and convenience. You can see there's a bit of unalignment there. And that's where if we can break that Gordian knot and create alignment, we actually create that non-zero sum, everybody wins situation, because there is real value to be delivered here. And it's cost savings for one and value to the other, and money flows. So this is my proposal. Now, in the upper right, when I was a kid, there was this great ad campaign. It was by Reese's. And, somebody would be walking down the street daydreaming and eating a chocolate bar. And for some reason, somebody would be just eating peanut butter out of a jar. And they'd bump into each other. And then, oh, you got chocolate in my peanut butter. You got peanut butter in my chocolate. And the idea was individually those things were good, but together they were great. And it went on to create movies like E.T. and, stuff like that, and et cetera. But the idea here is there's a synergy to be had. The chocolate and peanut butter created a synergy and created a new product which was better than the individual components. So my proposal is for those who are a design, build, and support company, there's a new type of service to add to your portfolio. And the key here is that it's a packaged service, so the definition is fixed rather than RFP-based or just time and material support-based. And it's around remote operations. And each one of you is going to have a different perspective on what that means for your customers. It could be just SCADA alarm management for them, monitoring. It could be compliance reports. It could be the monthly report out of the historian that goes to this person or that person. It could be just even teeing up the actual on-site support to do that predictive maintenance. We noticed that motor 19 is going to need to be replaced next weekend. Let me go and order a new one for you, etc. It's a prepackaged service. You build a definition, you put a price on it, you sell it as value. So there's two ways you price things in the world. There's cost plus. Cost me $50. I want to make a 10% profit margin. Therefore, I sell it to you for 56. And then there's value. The value is how much value are you getting out of this? I'm going to try to get as much of that to me as I can. Here, you can price this based on value. So you're not getting into an hourly labor rate and how many people are this level of skill set and this certificate. You're instead saying, look, my remote support package 19, my remote operations package is worth this amount of money, and that's my price. And I want you to be a long-term happy customer. We're going to sign up to yearly or 5-yearly contracts, whatever. And then we're going to partner with you, and we're going to solve that friction. We're going to break that Gordian knot apart so that identity doesn't become a thing. Everybody gets to sign in as themselves. There's no new passwords, no new users. Don't have to worry about the HR challenges of company A leaking into company B. We'll solve that remote access problem so that people can get connectivity, the thing they need, from where they are without having to bring up that VPN. And that allows you don't have to change the subnets on your PC because they use the same IPs internally that you do. We just fix that problem together. And we become part of that service for you. So it's not a resell type of agreement. It's packaged in there, and together we make good money and good happy customers. And I think this is non-zero sum. This really is a cheaper way to provide more value for all parties. That going back to that skill set gap, or things that need to be centralized to be cost effective, like big data, or things that are just hard, like the PLC programming. You centralizing that means that your unit costs go down. You're sharing that back to your customers as value, and they're seeing that as I have less outages, I'm happier, there's less friction. Everybody is very, very happy in this relationship. And that's where I'm going to leave this. I'll take any comments in the chat, or you're always welcome to email afterwards. But the value that Agilicus provides to our customers is really that enhanced security. Again, the operator cares the most about this, but the management company cares too, because you may have to carry insurance in this area. You may have to carry what's called errors and omissions cybersecurity rider on it. And, reducing your risk is going to reduce your premium. And, reducing your premium means there's less likely chance that you're going to be in the news because you did something bad, and everybody wins there. And also, getting in and out of that quote unquote air gap network more effectively, and still securely is what you want. Increased operational efficiency, not having to create shadow account systems, not having to have a different means of working with each customer. It just works on your device where you are, where, you pull over the side of the road, you pull out a tablet, you open the HMI, click, click, click. Okay, I can see what's going on. Let me just do this. Bam. The VPN is a big source of compromise. And we've seen that a lot recently. Everybody kind of woke up to it a few years ago with the Colonial Pipeline hack. One contractor, one VPN, and suddenly there's no gasoline on the East Coast of North America. It's a big problem. Just the other day, there was a huge scare. There's a fairly popular VPN company called Avanti, and it's in a lot of industrial systems. And CISA, the FBI, and EPA issued an alert on this. The EPA is there because this is directly in those wastewater treatment plants. So, getting rid of those risks and increasing your operational efficiency is a real good thing. The VPN is a risk. The other day I did a blog post and I compared it to Old Yeller. It's an old faithful friend, and it's going to bite your hand and give you rabies, so it's time to get rid of it. That's the VPN. Then last is that seamless user experience. We've seen lots of things in history where the best technology doesn't win, the simplest one wins. Ease of use, ease of adoption, simpler, lower friction, less training. This is really what Agilicus is providing as part of this value proposition. So you're providing remote operations, knowledge of the process, knowledge of the SCADA, knowledge of this and that. And what we're providing is that seamless user experience and enhanced security, simplified identity. And that's the partnership that I'm proposing on this webinar today. So with that, if there are any questions, you may feel free to type them into the chat on the side. I will answer them as I go. Otherwise, we will follow up afterwards with a copy of this, which will be on our website, www.agilicus.com. And thank you very much for your patience and attendance today. I tried to avoid telling any of my very lame jokes, but I probably didn't. I probably told one or two of them that I sort of notorious for, but Agilicus would love to partner with any one of you, whether you are the operator and have this issue, whether you are the design build company and looking to get into or already have a set of remote operation services that this could augment. I think there's a great partnership here for us. Or if you know somebody like that, I will always take introductions. My email is don@agilicus.com, and the company general one is info@agilicus. With that, seeing no questions, thank you very much for your attendance today. I appreciate it, and bye-bye.